everybody. Welcome to the Deadology podcast. I'm your host, Howard Weiner, and today is August 29th, 2023, and this will be the fifth episode of the podcast. And for this episode, let's do some Deadology. We're a couple days away from September 2nd and Labor Day weekend, and September 2nd is one of the 33 essential dates of Deadology in a book I wrote a few years back. And let me explain how I came about the 33 essential dates, what the criteria for that is. First, it might be easy to explain what not is an essential date, because some people get confused with this. May 8th, the famous Cornell show, that on itself is not an essential date. That's just one amazing day in Grateful Dead history. If May 8th were to be an essential date, there would have to have been at least two other noteworthy shows on that day, which I didn't feel they were. So consequently, May 8th was not selected as an essential date. Now, an obvious choice for essential date would be New Year's Eve, December 31st, because of all the great shows they played. That's a no-brainer. There's at least 10 noteworthy shows that were played on New Year's Eve. So December 31st is an essential date. And the one we're going into now, obviously, is September 2nd. Is an essential date. There's 3 or 4 noteworthy shows on that day. The Grateful Dead played 8 times on September 2nd. The first show was 1966, La Dolphin in Hillsborough, California. There's no existing tape of that show, so we don't have much to say about that one. On September 2nd, 1968, they played at Betty Nelson's Organic Raspberry Farm in Sultan, Washington. Now, that is an amazing show. I'd highly recommend digging that one out. That's Betty Nelson's Organic Raspberry Farm, 1968. A lot of great tunes on that. Some very unusual playing that night. And then they took a 10-year break from September 2nd, but they came back strong late in the 70s and throughout the 80s. September 2nd, 1978 is the Giant Stadium show. First time they played Giant Stadium. The following year, they played in Augusta Civic Center in 1979. One of the more intimate venues that they played on the East Coast at that time. Great place. I saw the Dead there in 1984. Another cool place to see the Dead was Rochester War Memorial Auditorium. Dead played there September 2nd, 1980, and that may be the show of the year. That's why I'm focusing on Giant Stadium and War Memorial for this episode, because they were such great shows. Then they again played on September 2nd in 1983 at the Boise Pavilion in Boise, Idaho. That's another great show. I believe it was released, I can't remember the volume, it was released as a Dave's Picks. They played Help on the Way, Slipknot, Franklin's, a great show. That one's worth checking out. And the last 2 Grateful Dead shows on this date, 1985 in the Zoo Amphitheater in Oklahoma City, and in 1988 at the Cap Center in Landover, Maryland. And there also was a Jerry Garcia band show the following year in 1989, September 2nd, 1989, in Meriwether Post Pavilion. I happened to be at that show. That was the only time I seen Jerry Garcia on September 2nd. But now let's jump back and go to 1978, Giant Stadium. And this weekend, on September 2nd, will be the 35th anniversary of this amazing show in East Rutherford, New Jersey. So the Giant Stadium show comes almost exactly 1 year after the legendary Englishtown 1977 show. That was a huge, the biggest show of the year, biggest attendance. It featured Marshall Tucker Band, and I think New Riders also that day. Just a landmark event in Grateful Dead history. And it turns out that almost a year to the day, they show up in the swamplands of Jersey again and play the largest concert of 1978 in first time playing Giant Stadium. And on this occasion, New Riders of Purple Sage opened up, and then Willie Nelson followed. And then the Grateful Dead hit the stage after an introduction from John Scher. And this show, this was right around this time they were debuting the songs from Shakedown Street. They had just debuted Shakedown Street at their last show in Red Rocks. They didn't play it here in Giant Stadium. And also they were hitting the end of an era. We were getting close to they didn't know it at the time, but they were getting close to the end of the God Show era. Keith and Donna, this was one of their final tours. They would be done with the band on February 17th, 1979. And also this Giant Stadium show was the last show before they took off for Egypt. So I would call this one of the top five performances of 1978. Happens at a watershed kind of moment for the Grateful Dead. So they just come out with this show. The creativity was kind of thrown out the door. The Grateful Dead were the best band in the land. They came out and played their best songs. There were no huge surprises this night, but they played with such energy. It was really an incredible thing. I remember the first time I heard this tape. I got the tape from, I can't remember who I got it from. I got both sets, and I'm listening to it, and I was kind of blown away by how long the jams were. In each song, the Jack Straw, the Friend of the Devil, is rolling along. And I'm listening. I'm like, my God, nobody had ever cued me in about this tape. It was probably in 1981, 1982 when I was listening to it for the first time. And I had a new tape to go brag about to all my Deadhead friends, say, you guys are not going to believe how good this show is. That's how good and consistent the jamming is from Giant Stadium. So they open up with Jack Straw. Very hot guitar work from Jerry on this, longer than usual for 78. And Friend of the Devil in the second spot. Another just one of the best performances of Devil you'll ever hear. One oddity of it, Garcia says $15 bill instead of $20 bill in there. Must have been some kind of running joke, inside joke with the band. But when they get to the guitar solo on this, I mean, Jerry just goes off, man. It's like up to that point, well, this would be in contention for best ever Friend of the Devil. It's that good. If you don't know it, you got to check it out, man. Great Friend of the Devil. Then the show rolls along with some desirable tunes. You got Minglewood Blues in the third spot. Not the greatest Minglewood. There's hotter Minglewoods. Then they do Direwolf, Looks Like Rain. Then comes the new songs from Shakedown. Very good early version of Stagger Lee, the reworked Hunter Garcia folk tune. And then after that, Weir breaks out his new tune, I Need a Miracle. And man, it is rip-roaring energy. The guitar work is great. The band's just crushing it. Weir misses a few lyrics. I'm not sure they had it exactly down, what the lyrics they wanted to settle into on Miracle. But the crowd was going nuts after it. You could just tell it was an explosive performance. And one of the things with I Need a Miracle, the first year or so when the band played that, the guitar solos and the outro jams were great. There's a lot of energy. I always enjoyed I Need a Miracle through the years, but the solos, the outro solo in it was kind of neutered, and it was pretty much just the same every time. They really didn't go off on it. But for the first year or so, I Need a Miracle was just a crushing tune. The best performance of it is from Springfield, January 15th, 1979. A lot of you probably know that. It goes into an amazing shakedown that has the coolest beginning of any shakedown. So that's one worth checking out if you don't know it. It starts the second set, Springfield, January 15th, 1979. I Need a Miracle shakedown. Getting back to Giant Stadium, we got Perry, that's my friend's name, Jerry. Jerry sings an amazing Peggy-O. And great version. They're totally locked in. And the set ends with Lazy Lightning, Supplication. Once again, sizzling, crisp. Everything is just straightforward, rock and roll. They had the arena rock feel out on this evening. And Lazy Lightning, Supplication in this time period often ended the first set, and it was a very electric way to end the set. So very good stuff for the opening set there in Giant Stadium, and it only got stranger and better as the second set starts. The Grateful Dead got East Rutherford, New Jersey out of their seats and dancing for well over an hour straight before drums with one of the best pre-drums you'll ever hear. Set 2 starts with Good Lovin'. Very well done, exciting, nice little trade-off vocally between Donna and Bobby in the rap section of the song. And then they go into Scarlet Begonias. And the place is just euphoric at this point. Garcia's ripping. The band has just like a straightforward attack mode. So they hit the outro of Scarlet, and Garcia is just going on and on, strong like bull, repetitive licks, just the slight variation, just on and on. Not much of a change of direction, but almost like an overpowering performance. And even when the band decides to go into fire, Jerry just keeps ripping those scarlet licks, almost like a fire alarm would go off, which is fitting, obviously, since Fire on the Mountain is the next tune. And it's an historic Fire on the Mountain because in this version, they introduced the almost ablaze verse. Up to this point, Fire on the Mountain only had 2 verses. This is the first version where they add the extra verse, and now you got 3 verses, which means instead of 1 between verse jam, you got 2 between verse jams. And I felt that in 1977, after May of 1977, the Scarlet Fires, especially in the Fire in the Mountain, started to get a little repetitive. They weren't as long as like the Cornell version, and I think adding this second verse on This Day in Giant Stadium, it gives Garcia 2 chances at a between verse solo, so he could either build upon what he did in the first jam, or he could totally change direction and do something else in the second jam. So a lot of options. It brought a lot more musical diversity to the song, and more is always more, but more Jerry equals better for sure. And very good Fire on the Mountain. A lot of good jamming. We're looking at almost a half-hour Scarlet Fire here. And then they put together their other great new combo, Estimated Eyes of the World. And in the Estimated, smoking between verse jam. And then Weir goes back to sing pretty much at a normal point. Garcia just overruns him, like get out of my way. No stopping Jerry on this night, man. So unusually long Estimated for the time period. And then that outro jam just goes on, once again, on, and it kind of unwinds, and it'll finish in its own time. It's one of the longer and better Estimated jams, but unusually long for 1978, in a year where that song really started branching out. And then Eyes of the World, and this thing just keeps ripping and ripping. But the cool thing about it, there's each jam is long, but yet the feel, it's got a mellow feel. A lot of Eyes of the World from this period, the pacing got too quick. A lot, not just my opinion. A lot of people, a lot of Dead fans feel that it didn't have the same feel as 1974. It felt a little more too perky, but this version from Giant Stadium, September 2nd, Garcia, the beat's nice and easy, swaying softly, and Garcia's just rolling along with it. Long jams, just really well done Eyes of the World. And so there you have the Scarlet Fire Estimated Eyes in a row. And I'm taking a guess here. I figure that was probably done, maybe 25 times in Grateful Dead history. That's just a guess. But this one is definitely one of the best, where you get those combos back to back, Scarlet Fire and Estimated Eyes. I still believe the best version of Scarlet Fire and Estimated Eyes back to back is Hartford, October 14th, 1983, which is on Dick's Picks 6, but it's close. I mean, this one is right there with it. So 1 and 1A, you could actually call them. So a great start. Good Lovin', Scarlet Fire, Estimated Eyes, just getting everything they can out of it. And the crowd, you could just hear the crowd on the tape, even through the soundboard, man. It was just an electric night in Giant Stadium. Maybe it was a time factor, maybe it was the roses, but the after drums, a little disappointing for such a great show. You would have liked to seen the Grateful Dead finish it off. It was drums, space, Sugar Mag, Adios, and one more Saturday Night Encore. a decent Sugar Mag, but it probably didn't live up to the energy of the show up to that point. Just drums, Sugar Mag, One More Saturday Night. And here's the difference between 1977 and 1978. 1978, the Grateful Dead were on top of the world as musicians. They were playing, kicking ass, and taking names. But they didn't put as much effort into crafting a show. In 1977, like the Grateful Dead almost had like they were out to prove something. And you look at all those shows, Cornell, Fox Theater with the playing Uncle John's loop, where they start from the end of playing from the end of Uncle John's and go back to the beginning of Uncle John. Incredible. And then they would do like the Hollywood Palladium show, a bunch of Jerry tunes in a row, Wharf Rat, Terrapin, Morning Dew, and they would do just so many shows where the band was putting in this set list effort and trying to create great shows. It was an obvious intent to do that. I don't feel 1978 has the same intent, but the Grateful Dead are the Grateful Dead, and at this point they're on top of the world, the best live band out there. So it's almost like a touch of almost a hubris or arrogance, but they were that great that they could just pick up their guitars, okay, let's play some songs, and they didn't even have to think about what they were going to do. Just play the typical songs, let it roll. And one of the things which probably hurt them a little bit in '78 was they only played Morning Dew once, which didn't leave them many options after drums for Jerry ballads. They had to improve that area. But there were exceptions to this in 1978. Take the Red Rock show, where the Grateful Dead were inspired and put together. I would call that probably the show of 1978, the July 8th show, which was, they played 2 nights in Red Rocks, July 7th and July 8th. The July 8th show was brilliant, so well crafted, overabundance of great songs, so they really put the effort in that night. But some of the shows of '78 just lacked the effort and intent of 1977, and maybe that's why the band started looking for a new direction and thought of replacing Keith and Donna. They kind of needed to change as they were moving forward into 1979. Let's segue to my favorite of all the September 2nd shows, 9280 War Memorial Auditorium, Rochester, New York. The Grateful Dead were on an amazing run at that point. They played a couple of shows in Philly on August 29th and 30th. They're both great shows, but there's some versions from that August 30th show which are just off the hook, especially in that first set. Maybe the best the best Althea ever, better than the famed one from May 16th, 1980 in the Coliseum. Incredible Jack Straw, top 5 Jack Straw, Great Fire on the Mountain, Feel Like a Stranger to open that first set. Was one of the better ones. First time they ever opened a set with Feel Like a Stranger, or at least the first set, and then it became fixed in that position pretty much, Feel Like a Stranger. But yeah, that Philly show is spectacular. And August 31st, the show before this one, the second set of that show is just unbelievable. I'm going off the top of my head here, like A Greatest Story, Uncle John's. There's a Sailor Saint, an amazing Truckin' Before Drums, just some of the hottest stuff. Oh, Comes a Time, one of my favorite Comes a Times also, all that stuff before drums. So they came into the War Memorial on fire. And just a little side story about Rochester. My first show was 3981, so it wasn't until 1981 that I really started getting into the Grateful Dead. So I just missed the Rochester show by a little bit, but it's always been one of my favorite tapes. It was among my first dozen. About 3 years ago, I was getting a new car. I'm sitting in the Honda dealer. A salesperson goes to get my license plate, and I'm having this thought, like, that would be cool if my first, if I had a vanity plate. I might do like 3981 MSG to honor my first show on my plate. Of course, I'm not going to do that, but I thought it would be a cool thing if I did do a vanity plate, do 3981 MSG. The dealer comes back, shows me my plate. The last 4 digits on it are 9280. No kidding. 9280, 9280. the last four digits of my New York State license plate. So a bizarre moment in the Honda dealership, but proud to drive my car around with those 9280 plates. So on that night, the Grateful Dead open up, and they're always hot in upper New York State, Rochester, Binghamton, Cornell, anywhere in that, within a couple 100-mile radius of Albany and New York City. Grateful Dead always brought their best. Open up with Minglewood, nothing crazy, just something to warm up with. Then they go into Sugaree. Very cool. In the second solo, Brent does a very nice jam at the end of the second solo, and Garcia goes off on the third solo. 1980 was a great year for Sugaree. You also got the Anchorage Sugaree from June 21st, 1980, and Lewiston would come on September 6th. Those are the two best Sugarees from the year, but this one's right up there, probably in the third spot. Very good Sugaree, set a good tone for the night. It rolls into El Paso, a great song on the heels of Sugaree. The Garcia's picking going from Sugaree to El Paso. It works. It's very fluid. Then Friend of the Devil's in the fourth spot. And I know I mentioned how great the Giant Stadium Friend of the Devil was. This one's right up there with it. I mean, Garcia's just shredding. Brent's doing his thing. Great keyboard solo. I love these slow Friend of the Devils. It's great that they played the quick ones early on, 72 to 74. But the way Jerry turned this into a ballad and really sunk his heart and soul into Friend of the Devil. I love the ballad Friend of the Devil versions. Following Devil, a nice little choice. It's All Over Now. It's sort of rare for the time, but the following a good It's All Over Now too, man. Garcia was percolating, hitting some hot leads that I noticed when I listened to this again. But something that was definitely rare, China Cat Rider in the middle of the set. So It's All Over Now, China Cat Rider, and China Cat always blows the crowd apart. Like the crowd goes crazy every time that song's played. It's a deadhead favorite. But to catch the thrill of catching it in the middle of the first set, and the stronger part of this duo was the Rider. The Rider was very hot, but just a great continuing the great tone of the show. And on the heels of that, it's a night of combinations. And also the Grateful Dead are now going to heaven, because the next four songs are all from their new album. We got Lost Sailor, Saint of Circumstance, Don't Ease Me In to finish the set, and then Althea to open set two. So that's four consecutive performances from their new album, Go to Heaven. But Sailor Saint on the heels of Cat Rider is pretty awesome. If we think about it, there was a lot of second sets where Cat Rider, Sailor Saint would be the pre-drums segment. So in the first set, you're getting a whole pre-drum segment pretty much in the second half of the set. And it closes up with Don't Ease Me In. Pleasant song, maybe not the most jamming way you want to end a set, but hey, the way this first set went with all the great songs you got, the Great Devil, Great Sugaree, China Cat, and huge set from Garcia. We're with the Sailor Saint, just a very top-notch first set, and it's only going to get stranger and better in set two. So they open up with Althea. And as I already mentioned, they played this great version on August 30th in the Philly Spectrum. So I can't compare it to that because nothing compares to that one. But it's a great Althea. Garcia's probably not, they're not pounding it as hard as they did that night in Philly or on the great Nassau Coliseum version. But this is without doubt, a top-notch version. Nice extended solo, a little more laid back than the great one at the Philly Spectrum, but a great way to kick off the set. Then you got CC Rider, solid version of CC Rider, and then they get into a mellow roll with Ship of Fools. Now at this point, if you're listening to the tape and you don't know what's coming, or you're just listening to me here, Althea's CC Rider, Ship of Fools might not be the most wanted start to his second set, but from this point forward, this show is off the charts. One of the best shows. They go into Estimated Prophet, excellent version, good between verse solo, long, dreamlike jamming at the end. And this show, like the difference in feel is between this show and the one from Giant Stadium is very noticeable. This show, they're taking their time. There's a lot of nuance and twists and turns and Grateful Dead weirdness, as opposed to the straight ahead attack of the Giant Stadium show, which in its own way was amazing. So it's great to have both sides. But on this night, there's a lot of listening and conversation between the musicians. Brett Midland's effect on the band could be clearly heard. He's playing great on this show. And Estimated just dwindles into Terrapin Station. So Rochester's totally pumped. Great version of Robert Hunter's unbelievable anthem. Jerry sings it beautifully. On this night and throughout most of 1980, Jerry Garcia's voice was incredible. So a very good version of Terrapin. And you think it's going to go into drums. They've already put in some time here before drums, but they bust into playing another long song. So they get, they rip into playing. The jamming's very hot. And, hey, that's a pretty cool pre-drums. Estimated Terrapin playing to hit the 4, 5, 6 slot. And then you got drums. And what happens after drums is insane. The stuff of dreams. And it ended up, what happened after drums, the Space, Iko, Morning Dew, Sugar Magnolia, ended up as a segment on Dick's Picks 21. After the Richmond show that Dick picked out for that particular volume, that particular release, they added the Space, Iko, Morning Dew, Sugar Mag. And the reason I'm thinking they never released a whole 9280 show in its own right was probably that I think they're missing some of the soundboard recordings. It wasn't a perfect recording, but the Iko Dew Sugar Mag was captured in pristine soundboard quality. Thank goodness, and we get that on Dick's Picks 21. So as they come out of drums, you just get a feeling, even if you're in the audience or you're just listening to it on tape or however you listen to the shows, there was something unbelievable about it. You could just tell that the band was building towards something. It was as if they were taking pixie dust and throwing it out there on the crowd. You could just tell something amazing was brewing. Jerry was playing these hypnotic leads over like an African kind of drum rhythm that and bass and it was an amazing space. A lot of these great segments start in the space. You could tell the band's psyched and building towards something. And this night they were going to give Rochester something that would be forever, immortal. Just as amazing a segment as you could ever see. So it just kind of effortlessly floats into Iko, Iko. And this is my favorite version of Iko. It's relaxed, it's nice, it's perfect coming out of space, and the crowd's going nuts, and you could tell something bigger is going to happen. It's just one of the, when you hear the music, you can just tell this isn't just Iko. It's going to be part of a bigger segment, and the band knows it, and everybody could feel it. So it's a great Iko. Brent's keyboard work on it is beautiful. And it's really different from any Iko. Just the tempo of it, a little bit slower, a little bit more hypnotic. And then, boom, at the end of it, they take Iko for 6-7 minutes. And then they make the transition that everybody wanted to hear. Morning Dew. Euphoric pandemonium breaks loose in Rochester when they break into that dew, man. It's really something to behold. In 1980, this was only the fourth Morning Dew. It was a rare tune at the time. It's always it's like a religious experience when you're out there singing Morning Dew, but especially when it was as rare as it was at the time. Rochester was just on their heels in love with the Grateful Dead. And Garcia's version, Garcia's singing here, just like it's so soulful, and it really digs in. There's nothing. This is the way Morning Dew should be performed. It's a perfect version, like in every way, from the singing to the spacing, the silence. When the band doesn't play, they know when not to play, that kind of thing. And the audience responds like it's a religious service at the right times, cheering on the Morning Dew. Phil's laying down the bombs in that first jam. Everything's just building to this momentous peak. And when Jerry hits that final, it doesn't matter anyway. He only sang it twice, and that last time he sang it, it was perfect. He didn't need to do it 3 or 4 times. It was perfect. And then layer by layer, this Morning Dew is just crazy because it starts off so beautifully. Like you listen to those opening notes coming out, and it's amazing how the band and the audience are listening to what Jerry's doing and just responding to it incrementally as they should. And it just builds and builds, and it hits the perfect climax. And at this time, the band in the recent shows they were doing and this show, they would do these thunderous fanning finales that were just mind-blowing. And so 1980, especially this particular tour, was an incredible time where the band was totally lock and step. And this is one of the great Dews. I would put it up there in the top 3 Dews. Might even be the best because every part of it, there's like almost a perfection to it. Now, there's a couple others where I might think the instrumental Garcia's work might be a little better. I like this one better than Cornell. I think I'll take Alexandria Palace. Might go up head to head with this one, but whatever. I think there's just the consistency in everything they did in this Morning Dew that just works. And no other perfect way to finish out this segment than a rocking Sugar Magnolia. It releases all the tension, and it's like the greatest celebration song after hearing an Iko Morning Dew. So what a segment. Iko Morning Dew was the only time they played it, and finishing off that little finale with Sugar Magnolia. And once they hit the jamming part of Sugar Magnolia, very hot version. And once again, it's that thundering, fanning, with the band, everybody's just crunching the chord progression at the same time, quicker and quicker. And they had something going on this tour, man. That was special. And so Space, Iko, Dew, Sugar Magnolia, a 3-song segment that will forever be remembered as one of the great segments in Grateful Dead history for sure. And you're done with all that, and you think you might get a throwaway. The encore is usually left something to be desired after a great finale like that. But hey, on this night they broke out Alabama Getaway, and I would have loved to see an Alabama Getaway as an encore. I never saw it in my days. But in 1980, they played Alabama Getaway as an encore, I believe, 8 times. So it wasn't too unusual, but it was a great way to follow up on this segment, man. And I really think that would have been an amazing encore for the Grateful Dead to play more often, Alabama Getaway. But, this Rochester show, I do believe, is the best top show of 1980. So after this fall 1980 Northeast tour, the Grateful Dead were off to play those amazing acoustic electric shows in the Warfield Sanger Theater in New Orleans, and then Radio City in New York City. So it was an inspired time for the band. And hey, September 2nd, Deadology, an inspired date and an essential date in Grateful Dead history. And thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. I'll obviously be back next week with something. I think I'm going to dip into that Nassau Coliseum show from 73. September 7th, 1973. It's the 50th anniversary of that great show. Let's get into some early 70s stuff. I've been hanging in the 80s a lot here. So some early 70s, I'll have that out next week. But thanks for listening. My website, www.tangledupintunes.com. You can find all my books on there, including Deadology Volume 1 and Volume 2. I'm Howard Weiner. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for listening. Peace out.
We're going to take a short break. We'll be back in just a few minutes, so everybody hang loose.